The tennis world just imploded. Not because of match fixing, not because of doping, not because of any scandal we've seen before. This is something far more sinister, something that's been festering beneath the surface of professional tennis for years, and it just erupted in the most spectacular fashion imaginable. We're talking about the brutal, soul-crushing pressure that gets unleashed on young stars the moment they dare to shine too brightly, the moment they threaten the established order, the moment they make people believe in something new. Her name is Alexandra Eala. She's 20 years old. She's from the Philippines. And right now, at this very moment, she's standing at the absolute center of a firestorm so intense, so venomous, so potentially career-destroying that it's making headlines across the entire sporting world. But here's where this story takes a turn that nobody, and I mean absolutely nobody, saw coming. The greatest fighter tennis has ever known, a man who has defined what it means to be a champion for over 2 decades, just stepped directly into the line of fire beside her. Rafael Nadal has entered the arena, and he's not just defending his student with a polite statement. He's calling out an entire toxic culture, and he's doing it with the full force of his legendary status behind him. This is the story that's consuming tennis right now. This is the drama that has fans divided, that has social media in absolute chaos, that has everyone from casual observers to hardcore tennis nerds picking sides and preparing for battle. This isn't just about one match or one tournament or even one player's career. This is about the future of the sport itself, about whether young talent can survive the meat grinder of modern fame, about whether social media has become so poisonous that it's actually destroying the very athletes we claim to love watching. The setup for this catastrophe began innocently enough. Auckland, New Zealand, January 10th, 2026. The ASB Classic was unfolding like any other warm-up tournament in the weeks before the Australian Open. Players were shaking off the rust, testing their games, trying to build some momentum heading into the year's first Grand Slam. It was supposed to be routine. It was supposed to be forgettable. Instead, it became the launching pad for one of the most compelling and controversial narratives tennis has produced in years. Alexandra Eala arrived in Auckland as a relative unknown outside of hardcore tennis circles. Sure, people knew she trained at the Rafa Nadal Academy. Sure, there were whispers about her potential, about her left-handed game, about her tactical intelligence that seemed beyond her years. But ranked just outside the top 50 at the start of the week, she wasn't expected to make waves. She was just another young player trying to claw her way up the rankings, trying to prove she belonged at this level. And then she went absolutely nuclear. Her first significant victim was Donna Vekic, the Croatian veteran who had won an Olympic silver medal just months earlier. Vekic wasn't some pushover. She was an established top 30 player with genuine pedigree, someone who had been around the tour for years, someone who knew how to win matches. The expectation was that her experience would overwhelm Eala's youth, that the occasion might be too big for the 20-year-old. Instead, Eala dismantled her. Straight sets. Clinical, confident, absolutely dominant. It wasn't even close. The tennis world started paying attention. Social media started buzzing. Filipino fans who have been desperately waiting for a tennis star they could truly claim as their own went into absolute hysterics. This wasn't just a win. This was a statement. This was a young player from a nation with virtually no tennis infrastructure taking down an Olympic medalist on the big stage. But Eala wasn't finished. In the quarterfinals, she faced Magda Linette, a crafty Polish veteran known for her ability to frustrate opponents, to grind them down, to make matches ugly and uncomfortable. These are exactly the kinds of players that expose young talent, that reveal who's ready for the tour and who still has developing to do. Eala didn't just survive this test, she excelled. She showcased tactical awareness that left commentators genuinely shocked. She made adjustments between sets. She read patterns. She executed a game plan with the kind of maturity you normally only see from players a decade older. By the time she walked off the court after beating Linette, Alexandra Eala had officially arrived. The live rankings showed her cracking the top 50 for the first time in her career. She was the story of the tournament, the name everyone was talking about, the player that suddenly had tennis journalists scrambling to learn more about her background, her training, her game. The Cinderella story was complete. The Philippines had found their tennis star. Everything was perfect. Everything was magical. And then the semifinal happened. Wang Xu of China stood across the net, another young Asian star trying to make her own breakthrough. What followed was a battle, a genuine war of attrition between two players who absolutely refused to give an inch. The rallies were long and brutal. The baseline exchanges were punishing. Both players were digging deep, fighting for every single point with the kind of intensity that makes tennis beautiful to watch. It was tight. It was competitive. It was exactly the kind of match that could have gone either way. On this particular day, Wang was just slightly better, slightly steadier in the crucial moments, slightly more composed when the pressure peaked. Eala fought with absolutely everything she had, but it wasn't quite enough. She lost a competitive, hard-fought semifinal to a quality opponent. In any rational universe, this would have been the end of the story. A young player has a breakthrough week, makes the semifinals of a WTA tournament, loses a close match to another rising star, and moves forward to the next event with her head held high and her ranking at a career best position. That's how it should have worked. That's how it would have worked in a different era, before social media turned every sporting event into a referendum on character, before algorithms learned that outrage generates engagement, before anonymous strangers felt empowered to dissect and destroy athletes from behind their keyboards. Within minutes of the final point being played, the avalanche began. Twitter exploded. Instagram filled with venom. TikTok videos started appearing with titles like Eala exposed and the truth about Rafa's overrated prospect. Facebook groups dedicated to tennis became war zones of conflicting opinions and increasingly personal attacks. Every platform, every corner of the tennis internet suddenly flooded with criticism that went so far beyond normal sports analysis that it stopped being recognizable as sports commentary at all. This wasn't disappointed fans expressing frustration about a loss. This wasn't tactical discussion about what went wrong or what adjustments could have been made. This was something darker, something more personal, something that felt almost coordinated in its viciousness and its speed. The comments were absolutely brutal. Eala is all hype, no substance. She only gets attention because of Nadal. Typical overhyped prospect who crumbles when the real pressure hits. She's a marketing product, not a champion. Fraud, pretender, exposed. The words kept coming in wave after relentless wave, each one more cutting than the last, all of them directed at a 20-year-old woman who had just played the best tennis of her entire life for a week straight. The narrative shifted in real time, right before everyone's eyes. Suddenly, the story wasn't about her incredible run to the semifinals. It wasn't about her career-high ranking. It wasn't about her victories over established players or her tactical brilliance or her breakthrough week. None of that mattered anymore. The only thing that mattered was the loss. The only thing people wanted to talk about was her supposed inability to handle pressure, her alleged mental weakness, her failure to live up to expectations that, quite frankly, nobody had placed on her until about 72 hours earlier. One particularly vicious comment encapsulated the entire hateful narrative perfectly, and of course, it went massively viral. Eala is a Rafa Nadal Academy marketing product, not a champion. When the real pressure hits, she folds every single time. Wake up, people. That single comment got thousands upon thousands of likes. It was retweeted hundreds of times. It was screenshot and shared across every tennis forum, every discussion board, every Facebook group dedicated to the sport. It became the rallying cry for everyone who wanted to tear her down. The pile-on was absolutely relentless. Fans who had been celebrating her victories and posting heart emojis and Filipino flags just days earlier were now questioning everything about her game, her mentality, her worthiness to even be mentioned in conversations about rising stars. The speed of the turn was genuinely shocking. The totality of it was overwhelming. And for a moment, it genuinely seemed like Alexandra Eala was going to be buried under this tsunami of toxicity before she even had a chance to catch her breath, before she could even process what was happening. But then something remarkable occurred. Something that reminded the entire tennis world why Rafael Nadal isn't just one of the greatest champions the sport has ever seen, but one of its greatest leaders, one of its most important voices, one of the few people with the stature and the courage to actually stand up and say something when things go wrong. Rafa doesn't do this. Anyone who follows tennis knows this about him. He's famously private about his personal life. He's carefully controlled in his public statements, always measured, always diplomatic, always choosing his words with extreme precision. He doesn't wade into controversies. He doesn't get involved in social media battles. He doesn't use his platform to fight other people's fights. He stays in his lane, focuses on his tennis and his academy, and lets his racket do his talking. But this time was different. This time, he saw one of his protégés being attacked, being torn apart by a mob mentality that had nothing to do with tennis and everything to do with the ugliest aspects of internet culture, and he decided that enough was enough. The post went up on his official social media accounts just hours after the match ended. No PR-approved corporate speak, no carefully crafted marketing message designed by a team of consultants. Just Rafa being Rafa, direct and honest and powerful in his simplicity. He wrote, "A loss does not define a player's value. The way you rise again does. Tennis needs that spirit, not imposed stereotypes. Keep fighting, Eala." Let's pause right here and really understand what just happened, because this wasn't just a nice gesture or a throwaway message of support. This was a calculated, purposeful statement from someone who understands exactly what it's like to be in Eala's position, who has lived through his own versions of this kind of pressure, who has been written off and doubted and criticized countless times throughout his career. First, a loss does not define a player's value. That's Nadal speaking from 2 decades of experience at the absolute highest level of professional tennis. He's lost matches. He's lost finals. He's had entire seasons derailed by injuries. He's had moments where critics questioned whether he was finished, whether his body could hold up, whether his game would work on faster surfaces. He knows intimately what it feels like to face doubt and criticism. He's reminding everyone, and specifically reminding Eala, that tennis is a long game, that one result means absolutely nothing in the grand scheme of a career, that the only thing that matters is how you respond. Second, the way you rise again does. This is the warrior mentality that has defined Nadal's entire legendary career. He's not interested in excuses. He's not interested in self-pity or victimhood or dwelling on what went wrong. He cares about resilience, about character, about how you respond when things don't go your way. He's telling Eala that this moment right now, how she handles this adversity, how she processes this criticism, how she shows up at her next tournament, is infinitely more important than the match she lost. And then comes the knockout punch, the part of the statement that transformed this from a personal message of support into a public calling out of an entire toxic culture. Tennis needs that spirit, not imposed stereotypes. Nadal is not being subtle here. He's not hiding behind diplomatic language or trying to avoid conflict. He's directly addressing the stereotype that young players, particularly young female players from underrepresented regions, are somehow mentally fragile. He's addressing the lazy narrative that players who train at academies are manufactured products rather than genuine competitors who work incredibly hard to develop their games. He's addressing the assumption that one loss reveals some fundamental character flaw or proves that the hype was never justified. He's using his enormous platform, his 20-plus Grand Slam titles, his status as one of the most respected figures in the entire history of tennis, to say stop it. Stop with the lazy narratives. Stop with the hate. Stop with the toxic pile-ons. This player has the spirit that tennis desperately needs, and instead of celebrating that, you're trying to destroy her. The impact was immediate and seismic. Within 30 minutes, Eala responded. She didn't write a long emotional post defending herself or explaining what happened. She didn't apologize for losing. She didn't engage with the criticism or try to change anyone's mind. She simply reshared Nadal's message with 3 words. Loud and clear. We move. That response tells you everything you need to know about Alexandra Eala's mentality. She heard her mentor. She absorbed the message. She understood what he was telling her, and she's ready to get back to work. No drama, no victimhood, no dwelling on the negativity. Just pure focus on the next challenge, the next opportunity, the next chance to prove herself. The shift in narrative was stunning to witness in real time. Suddenly, the conversation wasn't about Eala's loss anymore. It was about the relationship between mentor and student. It was about Nadal's willingness to use his platform to stand up for what he believes in. It was about the toxic culture of online sports fandom and whether it's actually damaging the sport. It was about what would happen next. Because in tennis, you don't win arguments with words. You don't prove doubters wrong by posting on social media or giving interviews or making statements. You win arguments with results. You prove doubters wrong by showing up and competing and winning matches. And the tennis gods, in their infinite wisdom and sense of dramatic timing, had already scripted the perfect sequel. The draw for the Kuyong Classic, the prestigious exhibition event that takes place in Melbourne during the week before the Australian Open, had already been released. And sitting right there in black and white was the rematch that suddenly became the most anticipated match of the entire pre-slam period. Alexandra Eala versus Donna Vekic. The same Donna Vekic that Eala had dismantled in straight sets in Auckland. The same veteran who had just watched this young player who beat her become the center of a massive controversy. The same experienced campaigner who now had the perfect opportunity for revenge, for redemption, for proving that the first match was a fluke. The match is scheduled for tomorrow, less than 24 hours away, and the entire tennis world is now completely fixated on what's going to happen. Let's talk about what this rematch actually means, because the stakes have escalated far beyond what anyone could have anticipated just a week ago. On paper, this is just an exhibition match at a warm-up event. No ranking points, no prize money that will change anyone's life. Just a glorified practice session before the Australian Open begins. But we all know that's complete nonsense. This match has become something so much bigger than an exhibition. This is about validation. This is about proving that Auckland wasn't a fluke. This is about Eala showing everyone who criticized her that she belongs at this level, that she can handle pressure, that she won't be broken by a bit of social media hate. This is about her looking across the net at the same player she already beat and doing it again, just to remove any possible doubt. For Vekic, this is equally loaded. She's the veteran here. She's the Olympic medalist. She's the player who's been on tour for years, who has earned her place in the top 30 through consistent work and quality results. Losing to Eala once was embarrassing enough. Losing to her again, especially after everything that's happened, especially with the entire tennis world watching, specifically to see if the first result was legitimate, would be absolutely devastating to her confidence heading into the Australian Open. Vekic's game plan tomorrow is going to be simple and brutal. Serve big. Return bigger. Take control of points immediately. She cannot allow Eala to get into those long rallies where the Filipinos' consistency and court coverage become major factors. She needs to end points in 4 or 5 shots maximum. She needs to be aggressive to the point of recklessness, because playing cautious against someone as tactically clever as Eala is a guaranteed losing strategy. And here's the thing that makes this even more compelling. Vekic is going to be angry. Professional athletes have long memories, especially when it comes to losses they feel they shouldn't have taken. Losing to Eala in Auckland was a blow to her pride, to her confidence, to her sense of where she stands in the hierarchy of women's tennis. Reports from Melbourne say she's been practicing with extreme intensity all week, working specifically on her return positioning against left-handers, drilling the exact patterns that gave Eala success in their first meeting. So the central question for tomorrow's match is this. Can Alexandra Eala weather the inevitable storm? Because Vekic is going to come out absolutely firing. The first 3 or 4 games are going to be crucial. If Eala can hold serve, can somehow neutralize that initial burst of aggression, then she has a real chance to settle into the match and play her game. But if Vekic breaks early and gets ahead, the momentum could become overwhelming, and the doubts that Eala has been trying to push aside might start creeping back in. The venue matters too. The Kuyong Classic isn't just another warm-up event that nobody pays attention to. This tournament has genuine history embedded in every blade of grass. Kuyong Lawn Tennis Club was the home of the Australian Open from 1922 until 1987. Rod Laver played here. Margaret Court dominated here. This is where Yvonne Goolagong Cawley became a legend. The ghosts of tennis history walk these grounds, and being invited to compete at Kuyong is a statement in itself. You don't get invited to Kuyong just to fill out the draw. The tournament organizers are incredibly selective about who they bring in. They want players who bring star power, who have compelling stories, who can entertain the knowledgeable and passionate Australian crowds who show up every year. Alexandra Eala being here tells you everything about how the tennis establishment views her potential. They see her as a future star, someone worth showcasing, someone who belongs on this stage regardless of what happened in Auckland. The atmosphere at Kuyong is unique in modern professional tennis. It's intimate in a way that the sport rarely is anymore. The stadium isn't some cavernous arena that seats 20,000 people. It's a club setting where fans are close enough to hear the players grunt, to see the sweat on their faces, to feel the tension of every single point. This kind of environment can be intimidating for young players who are used to being somewhat insulated from the crowd by sheer distance. But it can also be energizing if you're the type of personality that feeds off that energy, that draws strength from having people care intensely about what you're doing. Eala seems to be that type of player. She's never struck anyone as someone who shrinks from the spotlight. If anything, she seems to play better when the attention is on her, when the stakes feel elevated, when there's something meaningful on the line. But with everything that's happened in the last few days, the criticism, the viral hate, Nadal's intervention, the global attention now focused on this rematch, there's a massive psychological element at play. Will the intimacy of the Kuyong crowd feel supportive, or will it feel suffocating? Will she embrace the pressure, or will it overwhelm her? Will she be able to block out all the noise and just play tennis, or will she be thinking about what people are going to say if she loses?